A superhuman is someone who is self-aware and who cultivates their natural self. Each one of us are gifted with our unique observations, inclinations, and curiosities about life. The goal of the Superhuman Project is to help professionals be their best self, to realize our full potential, to honor our natural selves. In each episode, I will invite professionals on top of their field and I will ask them questions about their quest for self-mastery, self-awareness, what makes them successful, and how they stay at the top of their game. Ultimately, it is about living a life we always wanted to live and not letting other people define it for us. Making sure we fulfill the potential that God has given us and we are living our best selves. Let's jump in. So guys, today we have Ruth Gotian. She is the Chief Learning Officer at Cornell, and she is one of the very few individuals in the world that studies success. I am so humbled and honored that Ruth accepted my invite for giving us time. And she talks about she's big on mentors. She has been studying high achievers, astronauts, Olympic athletes, and definitely we would like to know from her what she has learned. But I'll give it to Ruth to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Ruth Gotian. I am so excited to be here because I am on a mission to get people who want to be more successful, to give them the tools in order to do so. So I don't think anyone wakes up in the morning saying, I want to be average. I think everybody wants to be successful. So I have spent a career studying the most successful people of our generation. I have studied Nobel laureates and astronauts and Olympic champions and Fortune 500 CEOs and also people you've never heard of who have done incredible things, because I think everybody wants to be successful. They don't quite know the path to get there. So I'm on a mission to just lay it all out. And it's the topic of my upcoming book as well, The Success Factor.
Yeah, and we would like to know more about it. I have it in my notes. So Dr. Ruth has a book on her research work. It's called The Success Factor, and I think it's coming out in January 2022, right?
Yes, it's coming out next winter. I'm putting the final touches on it. It's really going to include some incredible people. A lot of very household names that are really going to inspire everyone.
Perfect. So let's jump right into it. So should I call you Dr. Ruth or should I call you Ruth?
Well, I tell everyone there's only one Dr. Ruth. She did her work to get that name. So she's Dr. Ruth. So I am either Ruth or Dr. Gotian. You can pick.
Okay, so I'll go with Ruth. So Ruth, let's jump right into it. I know that you are big on mentoring. You talk about mentoring teams, but let's start with the Superhuman Project community itself. I know I reached out to you and you were very kind to look into my request and accepted, gave me time. So what went through your mind when you saw the name, the Superhuman Project? What was your immediate reaction to that?
You know, and I think this is a great place to start, because I think a lot of people feel that people have these superhuman abilities, and that is what has made them so successful. But I don't think it's abilities. I think if you strip it all down and peel off the layers, there's actual regular things that us mere mortals can do to elevate our own success, to be what other people call superhuman. We're all superhuman. We all have the ability to be superhuman. We just don't always know which tools we're supposed to use.
Wow, that's very impressive. So let's jump right into it. When you say regular things, and you also mentioned something like not just the big high achievers or famous people, you also have studied regular people. So could you double click on the regular things that you talk about in terms of being our superpowers?
So why don't we talk about the four things that all of the high achievers have? And again, these are the household names, that the people like the Olympic champions and the astronauts, and the regular people who have done extraordinary things. They just have not had their face plastered on television, but they have done incredible things. So they all have four things in common. And it's not a particular skill set as much as it is a mindset. So they all have, the first thing is that they all have something they're extremely passionate about. They have found their purpose in life. They are intrinsically motivated to do something. What does that mean? I think they would do it for free if they could. This is what they love doing so much. Now, this is different from extrinsic motivation, which is the things that you do for a promotion, for a reward, for a diploma, for a certificate, for recognition. It's for where other people are judging you. Whereas the intrinsic, that's what comes from within. That's what lights your fires. That's what wakes you up in the morning. And that's really what you want to find. Because if you can find that, you won't be working a day in your life. You'll be working really hard, but you'll constantly be in that flow state because this is your mission. This is why you were put on this earth. Now, those who are fueled by extrinsic motivation, those people usually fail out or burn out. So you really want to find that intrinsic motivation, your passion. And for your readers, I actually put something I call a passion audit on my website. So if they go to ruthgotian.com/passion audit, there's actually a worksheet that you can find out what you're good at, but you can let go of, you wouldn't lose a minute's sleep over, and what you're truly passionate about. So it really helps you hone in on that. So that's number one. Number two is the strong work ethic. These are the people, because they love what they do, they are all in and they are really, really passionate about it. And they will work hard to see it to fruition. Nobody will work harder than they will. That's what makes them stand out. So that's number two. Number three, we're almost done, is that strong foundation, which is constantly being reinforced. Just because that they've achieved these great awards and these great honors doesn't mean that they don't continue to already do what made them so successful in the first place. So I always use the example of the Olympic athletes. The drills that they do to warm up in the Olympic Village are the same exact skills you would see in a junior high gym. Same ones. Nothing's changed. They do it faster. They do it more fluidly. They probably go, they jump higher. They have better equipment. They have fancier and more expensive sneakers, but it's the same drills at their core. All right. The physician scientists are still publishing and they're still applying for grants. That hasn't changed. And then the last one, the fourth one, is just because they have gotten the diploma or gotten the award does not mean that they stop learning. In fact, they crave learning. They're so curious. And it's not learning in a classroom. It's learning informally. It's learning by talking to people. It's learning by watching and observing other people. It's learning by reading, by watching videos. There's so many different ways that they can learn, but they're constantly looking for that knowledge transfer. So when you hear successful people read for 4, 5, 6 hours a day, that's not what it is. That's not what you need to do to be successful. They are transferring new knowledge into their head. That's what you need to focus on. How you do it is based on the way that you learn. And maybe for some people, it's reading 5 hours a day. Maybe other people, it's listening to podcasts such as this, and that's how they learn, or YouTube videos, or reading articles, whatever it is. You have to find what works for you. Now, the thing is, these very successful people will learn from everyone around them. So it's not just the people who are senior to them. They have people who are senior to them, junior to them, and at their level, which means that they all have mentors, all of them. They have someone who's guiding them, who's giving them feedback, and they understand that feedback is there to enhance what they're doing. It's not meant to critique what they're doing. Very big difference. So they crave that information. So they have all of these mentors all around them, and they mentor others.
I love it. I just love it. So if I may request you to go a little, second step on these four, if there are any stories that you can share, because these are very good points, starting with the successful people are passionate, their work ethics and strong foundation, and they learn in informal ways. But I think it will help if you could share some story, talk about from your study or from your interactions about these points, to give the listeners a better chance at understanding what you are talking about.
So if you look at, for example, one of the people who I interviewed was Apollo Ono. Apollo Ono is the most decorated Winter Olympian. He was an indoor short track speed skater. And he actually was a state champion, I believe, in swimming. So he actually did other sports beforehand, but he didn't love it. He just didn't love it. But there was something about putting on those speed skates and going around the track. All of a sudden, he was just in this rhythm, and it was all encompassing. And he talked to me about being in this state of flow where everything sort of just melts together and it's so fluid. It is so perfect. That's passion. And because of that, you're going to work harder and harder and harder and harder at it. Now, if we're going to continue, the work ethic, you can also talk about the astronauts, right? Do you know how they have to train to be an astronaut? And they don't quit. They don't quit. One person who I spoke with, Dr. Peg Whitson, who was the first female commander of the International Space Station, by the way, and spent more days in space than any other American astronaut. Do you know she had to apply for 10 years to be an astronaut before she was finally accepted? And she worked hard, and all of the astronauts worked so hard. Most of them had to apply multiple times. And they talk about, they have to train, and they have to train under these extreme conditions, right? And that's, they did that. They didn't give up. They never gave up. They kept working at it, working at it, and working at it. And the foundation, Ryan Millar, 3-time Olympian, a gold medal volleyball player. He was telling me that the same skills, there's something called pepper, which is something you do when you skill when you play volleyball. He said they would do the same thing on the Olympic team. That same exact exercise, same one that he did in his backyard with his brother, he was doing years later in the Olympic Village. And talk about informal learning. I mean, every single one learned from other people, every single one. So it's learning from other people, it's mentors. If you look at Dr. Lynn Wooten, who is the president of Simmons College in Boston, and Dr. Erica James, who is the dean at Wharton, they are peer mentors to each other. But when they met, they were in their 20s. They were grad students together at Michigan, but they weren't going to be grad students forever because peers rise together. So today, 30 years later, they're still best friends and they're each other's mentors, right? They were both deans of business schools, but they never competed against each other for a job. They actually helped each other out constantly, right? So it's all around them, and the mentors can be senior to you or junior to you or at your level. So, you know what you work on. Dr. Tony Fauci, he said to me, if you want to make an impact, you have to do something important, not just interesting. Do something important, not just interesting. And if you can do something important that you're also really interested in, the passion will be there, the work ethic will be there. You're going to use the tools that you've learned to build and reinforce your foundation, and you're going to ask for guidance from everyone around you. Everyone. So I interviewed the current Undersecretary of the Navy, and he says to me, he's called the mayor of the Pentagon because he will walk around and talk to everyone, the security guard, the front desk receptionist, the 2-star generals, whoever they are. He will talk to them. And in fact, he flips the organizational chart, right? He flips it. So the people who are usually at the bottom, in his mind, those are the people he reports to, because if they're not happy, nobody's happy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow.
So,
this is so good. Now, since you have studied these people, you gave an example of the Olympian who never gave up. And then I think that person applied for 10 years, I think the astronaut.
The
So
astronaut.
she applied for 10 years until she was accepted. So, like you talk about, the successful people never give up. Now, my question is, when you are thinking about success, there are always disappointments in terms of you have defined these short
Yeah.
goals or milestones, and you keep trying. In fact, this past weekend, I was watching this movie In Pursuit of Happiness with my son,
Great movie.
Will Smith. And if you remember, the kind of challenges or hoops he had to jump through to get through his first
Yeah.
break, that's really inspiring. But my question is, what's your guidance in terms of not being bogged down by disappointments or rejections? Because not everyone, I think, can handle rejections very well. So is there any advice or tips you can give?
Yeah. So there's two things. First of all, everyone has difficult times. Everybody has challenges. And I always ask the successful people, how did you overcome, what were your challenges and how'd you overcome them? And they all said to me, I'm sure I had them, I just don't remember them, because they don't let it control them. They control what they can control, right? They are very focused on controlling what they can control. To them, it's never a question if a challenge will happen, because it will happen, right? It's never a question for them if they will overcome the challenge, because they know that they will. To them, their question is, how will they overcome the challenge? So they put all of their focus and all of their energy on overcoming the challenge, not worrying about if I will overcome it. The Olympics were postponed a year. There's nothing those athletes can do about that, nothing. But they can focus on their training, they can focus on their nutrition, they can focus on their workout, they can focus on their mental well-being. That is in their control, and that's what they're focused on. Not the fact that the Olympics were postponed a year. That's out of their control. So they can't worry about that. And this is every single Olympian said the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah. That's very helpful advice, given that I am from a sales background and I'm used to rejections and cold calling. Now I'm jumping on to when you are faced with rejection or challenge, like you mentioned, these high performers, they never focused on what they don't have. They always focused on what was in their control. And I think that's where the concept of also having a circle of support or mentors, like you talk about, comes into play. So I would like to know from you, one, mentors or mentoring it's talked about a lot. We have seen so many research articles, topics about it. Something new that I found when I read you and I heard your interviews was you talk about peer-to-peer mentoring. You talk about not just looking at someone who is older than you as your mentor. So can you just share more about mentoring in the context of the post-pandemic world, especially people who are in jobs? Maybe they are working from home. Now they do not have chance to, in fact, connect with people in person. That adds another challenge. So in the current backdrop of scenarios, what's your advice on mentoring, finding mentors, and having that circle of support around you?
So remember, control what you can control. So you cannot be in person to talk to people, but there's a silver lining. Everyone is putting content out for free now on the internet. Webinars and LinkedIn Lives and Facebook Lives and everything you can imagine. And I don't know about you, but my LinkedIn following has doubled since the pandemic began, because people are craving for contact in other ways. So what happens is when there's a webinar, use the chat function, ask questions of the speaker, ask questions, put comments in the chat, and then let people know what resonated. So reach out to the speaker, say, Dr. Gotian, I heard your talk. It was really great. I especially appreciated your comment about blah, blah, blah. and then tell them why. And now all of a sudden you're connecting with the person. If someone in the chat, one of the audience members, one of the participants put something, they wrote something in the chat, let them know what it is that resonated with them and say, Amol, I really liked the comment you made about such and such. It really hit home for me because, and then you connect with them on the social media. So now all of a sudden, you're not just connecting with the speaker, you have the entire audience that you can connect with.
Yeah, that's very helpful. And I want to jump on to the LinkedIn part. Definitely, you are an inspiration to me as well. So given that whenever I, whatever time of the day I open my LinkedIn homepage, I would definitely see your post there. So, and I know you shared this interesting story about how you got on Twitter, but my question is more about, we all have, multiple priorities. And I know that I was talking to somebody else, they talk about the future of work or the hybrid workplace.
Yeah.
They say that digital marketing or having a presence on social media or something like LinkedIn as a subject matter expert is very important for the future
Yes.
of work. So how do you find time? Because, when I am managing a job remotely, I have to take care of kids, I have to do so many other things. And then on top of that, I'm reading books. On top of that, I need to learn these tools, how to create a podcast or how to be on LinkedIn and grow my network. How do you find time for that, or where is the place I should start?
So everyone's life is different. So what works for me may not work for you, but I actually chunk a time because I don't have anyone doing my social media. I do it myself. So certain things I schedule to post at certain times, but I will chunk time. I happen to know that at the end of the day is when I get more tired. So I try not to do cognitive tasks at the end of the day. I do all my thinking work, my cognitive work in the morning when I'm sharpest. So I always try to schedule meetings and Zooms and responding to emails and anything like that for the end of the day. The later the day goes, the slower I am. So that is when I will actually chunk time, and it's only about 15 minutes to actually post things or respond to things. So I tend to do that at the end of the day. So I'll either do it, if I wake up super early, I'll do it then, or I'll do it at the end of the day. And I limit myself to the amount of time, because if you don't, you can go down a rabbit hole and be on it for an hour and not accomplish anything.
So if I may ask, like during a typical work day, how many hours do you work? Or maybe let's put it differently. How many hours you spend in front of a computer or on calls and all kinds of things?
All day. I'm all day in front of the computer, but I'm not all day on calls. I've had to learn to limit the number of Zooms that I can do. I've learned to also give myself a break in between each Zoom, which I think is critical. You have to figure out what works for you. I'm on it all day, and then I come home and I'm writing my book. So I spend literally all day in front of a computer. So, but sometimes I'm standing, and
So let's say that your work day is a 10-hour work day. And so what's your wrap-up routine, or how would you make sure that you are maintaining a healthy balance between the tasks that you have in your to-do list or the stuff that you work on a daily basis, and so that you are energized for the next day and come back to it with the same rigor, same passion? How do you ensure you do that?
So I don't have a to-do list. What I do is every time I have a task, I actually carve out time in my calendar to actually do it. Because if I have a to-do list, it's not organized by any theme, which means it won't get done. So if I have someone's proposal to review, I know whatever time I need, I double it. I always double the amount of time. I carve that amount of time out. And I know if I should do it morning or evening or afternoon based on the type of work that it is. If I have to review articles, I'm an academic, I'm a faculty member, we review journals. I try to do multiple reviews in one day. This is my review day. And that's the way that I can actually get it done, which is helpful. You got to chunk it, or at least I have to chunk it.
This is very helpful. So could you walk us through a typical, like how your work week looks like in terms of how do you plan your calendar? Let's say, and I'll give you an example. I follow what you are saying exactly in my calendar as well. So I have build days versus actually just participating in calls. So I keep dedicated time for creative thinking, building stuff
Yes.
on my calendar. But I understand that, at a given point in time, our plates are full. So if I check my inbox, I'll be getting additional work, which I need to add to my calendar. So typically my rule of thumb is that I would put it 2 weeks out. That way it gives me, unless it's a fire drill, I'll give myself 2 weeks heads up on my calendar to start looking at that task. So could you, at a very high level, walk us through your calendar, how you plan your calendar?
Right. So the morning is when I do my creative thinking, I do my writing, I do editing, I do, again, the cognitive tasks. And that's because I am a morning person. So I actually do I block the first, I don't start my days with meetings. Absolutely not. I start my days, I actually will review any emails that have come in overnight. And in the morning is definitely spent doing writing and editing. The afternoon is when I try to chunk all of the meetings. And when I can, I also leave that last 30, 45 minutes to respond to emails and make sure I have everything in place for the next day. So I'm constantly planning things. And I know that there's a limit to how many Zooms I can do in one day and still be functional. And I try to be very strict with that. Now, I am a believer of the Pomodoro effect when it comes to my morning routine, which is, and you can adjust it to what works for you, but you do something very intense for, they say 20, 25 minutes. I usually do 30 to 40 minutes, but I try to cap it at 30, really intense focus, then a 5-minute break, and then another 20, 30 minutes, and then another 5-minute break. But during that really intense time, everything else is off. Alerts are off, phone is off, email is off, social media is off, everything is off. You have nothing else to do but what you are focusing on. And if you can do that, you will actually get so much done. Yeah. So I have, as of this summer, shut off all social media notifications, shut them off completely. And that has helped immensely because I don't need to jump up every time somebody likes one of my posts. That doesn't help my day at all. Shut everything off. When I log in, I'll see it. And that has saved quite a bit of time and energy and angst. So I am laser focused on what I'm doing for the time that I'm doing it. So it's the 30 minutes, 5-minute breaks, 30 minutes, 5-minute breaks. And again, you can adjust it based on what works for you. One time recently, I got into what's called a state of flow, where you're so into what you're doing that you lose all track of time. You're not hungry, you're not tired, you don't have to go to the bathroom, nothing hurts. I got into that state of flow and I said, I'm not going to take the break. I'm going to just keep on going. I kept on going for 3 hours. Wow. After that 3 hours, I was so exhausted. I was mentally wiped out. I was not functional for the rest of the day. So you need to give your body these breaks in between. So I didn't work really intently for 8 hours. I worked intensely for 3 hours. And the rest of the time, I really couldn't focus. I don't know that I was that effective as I could have been. So that was just a reminder that you need to give yourself those 5-minute breaks. Even if that means I'm back in the office, even if that means just walking around the hallway, you just need to see something different stimulation. So I tell people I use the washing machine as my timer.
This is so good. Now, you talk about the flow state, and I think Stephen Kotler, he has written so many books, and he has also a TED Talk on flow. And flow is the recent subject that I have been reading a lot about. So there are people, they talk about the movie Limitless, right? They talk about taking these supplements or a particular lifestyle to get more often into the flow state. What's
Mm-hmm.
your experience? Is there a recipe or is there a method of getting into flow that you have seen or recommend?
So flow happens when you're doing what you're passionate about.
Yes.
So you have to know your passion. And flow happens when you're sharpest. And that's at least what it is for me, where you're able to
Mm-hmm.
cut out all distractions. And that's what I really, really work hard to do that. So if I'm on a Zoom and I'm in the office, I actually put, and I do the same thing at home, I put a note on the door: Zoom in progress, do not enter.
Yeah.
And even before the pandemic, I would put a note on my door. So if I was working on a grant or a budget or writing or anything that required super focus, I could not have people knocking on my door every 2 minutes. It was
Yeah.
just too distracting. And I'm an extrovert. I love talking to people, but I know that people, like other people, I can get really carried away, and a 2-second question will turn into a half-hour conversation.
Yeah.
So, I leave those for when I take that 5-minute break and I walk around the hallway. And if I do that 30, I do 30 minutes. Everyone does their own 30 minutes, 5-minute break, 30-minute, 5-minute break. And I just walk around the hall. I go get water, go get a coffee. I am super, super, super productive the whole day if I can maintain that cadence.
This is so helpful. And do you follow any particular diet or any particular exercise routine to help you to get you going?
I wish. I drink way too much coffee.
Yeah, I love coffee too. But yeah, I try to keep it in the first half of the day to make sure that it is not hampering my sleep in the night.
Mm.
So this is good. And then let's move back. You have given me so many things to ask you about, but I'll go back to where we started about mentoring. So we all understand we all require mentors to have that circle of support around us in case we face any challenges to get through it. Now the challenge is finding those mentors. Like you always say this, having a peer as a mentor. So could you share more light on how to find these mentors, or what is the best way to find mentors? Because in my career, what I have seen is I would try to reach out to people. And sometimes these people are very busy. They are public figures. So they do not have time to spend dedicatedly one-on-one with you or to mentor.
Yeah.
So what's your advice? How or where to start?
First of all, don't ever ask someone to be your mentor. Because if you're asking someone to be your mentor, you're asking them to take on another obligation.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has time for that. Everyone's too
Yeah.
busy. So instead, you want to put yourself in these organic situations where you are able to talk and meet with other people and see who you connect with, see who you have chemistry with. And then you want to continue that conversation with them. Don't ask them to be around. See where it goes, see where it flows.
I love it. This is so good. I think this was something which I was missing. And let me ask you this. So I found someone that I have a good chemistry with, and we exchange notes on the topic. We talk to each other. How do you set a regular cadence with that person? Or what is the way to set up a cadence? Because like you mentioned, using our calendar to plan our days. So I like to have maybe pre-planned cadence or check-ins with the folks you call them mentors or friends, just to talk about anything and everything. What's your advice there?
But see, if you're doing that, you're actually making it an obligation again.
Yeah.
And what if there's nothing to talk about?
You're right. Yeah.
So why don't you instead say, I have this opportunity, I have this challenge, there's something I'm considering, I'd really love your perspective. Can I get 20 minutes of your time anytime in the next week or two? I really would love to get your thoughts on something. I never said mentorship. Never said it. Right? Because you don't want to waste someone's time, and you don't know if there's anything really to talk about. You don't want to make up things to talk about. You want to have this natural conversation and wait till there's something to talk about. And here's the other thing you need to do is keep them updated. Send them an email, send them a text message, however you're communicating. Just let them know what you're up to. So it's not that every time you talk to them, it's to ask them for something. You don't want to just, because what happens is if every time you go to your mentor and you need to ask for something, they're going to get exhausted from you.
Yeah.
Because you keep taking without giving. So you want to update them, say, oh, I read this book. I thought you would be really interested in it. It reminded me of our conversation. You can help them out with something. If you have a particular skill or a network, you can certainly help them, even if they are senior to you. Whatever it is, there's so many ways that you can help other people. And part of mentorship is just being in communication with someone. So if you're telling someone, I read this book or I heard this podcast and I thought about that, well, now they know that you're interested in something and you're staying on their radar.
Wow, this is so good. This is so good. I think this is the piece that's missing in all subject matter on networking, because I think, like you mentioned, the way you describe it, I've never heard it or seen it. This is the thing. So this is so good. Now I'm looking at my notes here, and so let's move on. I want to ask you about, given the hybrid work and most of us are now working remotely, what do you consider as the future workplace or the future of work, and what kind of skills you think are necessary to be prepared for the future of work?
Well, I think this is when we really need to drive up empathy. Now, I think we really need to be fine-tuned as to what our colleagues need, what we need from ourselves, what we need from each other, because we can have fantastic technical skills, but if we can't figure out if our colleagues are hurting or happy or feeling empty, we're not going to be able to work as a productive team. And even if you are working from home, you're still part of a team. You're an important member of a team.
Yeah.
But a team is only good as its weakest link. And if one of the members of that team is a little off for any reason, and it doesn't take much during COVID, it really doesn't, you're not going to be working at your best. So what can you do to help out the other members of your team so that they can feel whole? And I think before we ever talk about future of work and we're working hybrid and we're working from home and we're working for, at the, whatever it is, we have to remember, future or not future, it starts with the people. And we have to always remember that and empathize with each other. This is a great time to start building our EQ skills.
So how should we uncover that? I know that even when we are when we were going to an office, very rarely a meeting would start right away, jumping into the agenda and stuff like that. Very rarely people would care about knowing the human being that they have around each other, So, and which Dale Carnegie talks about in his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, to let the other person talk, to spend time in knowing the other person. And I don't see many people care much about that. So how should we do that?
I don't know that they don't care about that. I think they weren't trained that way. So I think at the beginning of every meeting, ask people how they're doing, right? Scale of 1 to 10. How are you doing? Right? 10 being fantastic. 1 being, oh, don't leave me alone. Right?
Yeah.
Find out how people are doing. If they're 7 or higher, great, leave them alone. Anyone who's below 7, you need to figure that out. You need to talk to them, maybe privately, right?
Yeah.
But figure out what can we do to help you bring up that number? What can we do? And that's a great time to have a one-on-one conversation with someone after the meeting is over. And get to know them as human beings. At the end of the day, they're human beings, just like you, just like me.
Yeah. The trick that works for me is, in any meeting, I try to give probably 60% of the time to the other person to talk and 30% to what I want to accomplish from the meeting. And sometimes, without knowing, even if the meeting starts with the core business topic, I would leave the rest, maybe last 10, 15 minutes to talk about the person. And, I will ask them what's top of the mind for you these days. And I'll start just an informal conversation about what's going on
Yeah.
here and there. I'll probe them. And that kind of makes them open up. And sometimes I might have some suggestions or ideas for them for whatever thing that's bothering them or that's top of the mind for them.
Yeah.
But this is
Yeah.
very good advice.
You have to find out what works for you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I also, in your interview, you talk about high achievers perform 400% more than an average employee.
Mm-hmm.
Could you explain that? Like, does it mean that if they are 400% more productive, they can probably, they are doing the work of 4 people?
What happens is, I think we set the bar way too low. So high achievers actually produce 400% more than the average employee.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is the way human resources are set up in most companies. If you are average or above, everyone leaves you alone. No one says a word to you. If you're below average, well, then you get a corrective action plan. There are people who are talking to you. They send you to training, whatever it is, they're trying to fix you.
Yeah.
But what's happening now, the high achievers are noticing that all the attention and all the resources are going to the low achievers. So what happens? The high achievers then leave. They leave the organization.
Yeah.
And then what's the company left with? At best, people who are average.
Yeah.
At worst, the low achievers. Right? That's not what you want. So you want to actually put energy and resources into your high achievers so that they are constantly growing and they raise the bar for everyone. You want to raise the bar, not lower it, right? And then everyone will be so much more productive. The whole company will be more productive. You'll have happier employees. Morale will be better. I mean, it's all good.
And how would you do that? How would you make sure that the high achievers are not ignored?
Well, first of all, you have to ask them, what do you need? Ask them. What is it what's on your wish list? What are some of the things that you need, that you want? Maybe, there's some companies that give them money to study something new. Some of them even give them resources. Some of them, maybe it's a day of giving back. They want one day every 6 months or every 3 months or whatever it is to give back. You don't know what they want. Maybe they want to learn a new skill, but we're always afraid to ask, right? It's not about money. I mean, money's great. Who's going to say no to that, right?
Yeah.
But they often want other things as well. And you have to ask them. You have to ask them what it is they want.
This is great. So while wrapping up, I would like to know from you, what's top of the mind for you these days? What are the latest trends that you are noticing, or what's, other than your book, obviously, what else is keeping you busy these days?
So the book is pretty huge because I spent a lot of my nights and weekends really working on that and finishing the interviews and writing it, and then putting out the information other ways, because I think, as I said at the top of the program, I said, I don't think anybody wants to be average. I think people really want to be successful. So it's giving them the tools. So I do some with my academic writing. I do some where I write for Forbes and Psychology Today, where I also teach them some of these skills. And I think people really want this. And I think we have to recognize that adults learn in different ways. So we have to produce content in different ways. So, things like this podcast are great. Podcast listening went way up during the pandemic, and YouTube videos and writing short articles and writing longer, more in-depth articles, recognizing that people learn in different ways. So we have to be open to try new things. And I'm really excited about it. And I cannot wait until we can travel again, because I love teaching and talking about these things. And I'm excited to be able to do that in front of a live audience again.
Yeah, I'm also waiting for that. So what is the book or a website that you have been impressed with a lot in the recent past that you are referring to or just talking to people about it? Any
Uh, uh,
resources there?
so I am a volunteer mentor with the Mentor Project, which is a group of high achievers who have all donated their time to give back. And they have thousands of hours of resources that are available. And they have webcasts and they have podcasts and they have, I mean, you name it, they have it. And what I especially love is that the mentors learn from each other. So we have these regular gatherings where we can learn from each other. So I'm an avid reader. I love to read books. I read 70 to 100 books a year. So I'm the kind of person that's constantly reading, and you can read what my new favorite books are because I often write about them for Forbes. So you'll hear all about them. They're great.
Perfect. Perfect. Any particular book that you go back to every now and then?
I have a lot of them. I love anything written by Marshall Goldsmith.
Yeah.
I think that's great. Rereading What Got You Here Won't Get You There. You know, I have a few books that I continue to reread. He also wrote a book with Sally Helgeson, How Women Rise. I recently reread that, which I think is fantastic. Another one of my favorite books of all time is A Higher Standard by General Ann Dunwoody. She's the first female 4-star general in the United States. And another book by Thomas W. Jones, From Willard Street to Wall Street. It's a story about the 1969 armed takeover of the student union at Cornell University and how he went from that to essentially being one of the biggest names in Wall Street. So it's a biography, which is so beautifully written. So I have a lot of favorites. Adam Grant's new book is fantastic. I love Dory Clark's books. Can't wait for her new one.
Yeah. Yeah, I love her books. I love her podcast, interviews. It's awesome. And in fact, you know, you are also a very good, I don't have words to explain, but I listen to your videos and learn and take notes all the time. So I love that.
Thank you.
So before I let you go, definitely thank you so much for your time. And I think I'm going to share your website and your coordinates with the audience in the show notes. But in case someone wants to reach you, where can they find you?
So if you go to ruthgotian.com, RuthGotian, ruthgotian.com, that's the best way to find out everything. And if you go to ruthgotian.com/passion audit, you can download your free passion audit there. And then all the social media, it's just my name, Ruth Gotian.
Perfect. This is great. Thank you so much, Ruth, for your time today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thanks for listening. You can continue to hear the full episode on our YouTube channel or Apple iTunes or Spotify. Go there and search for the Superhuman Project and you will find us. Also, if you would like to contact us, please go to our LinkedIn page and send us a direct message. Until next time, thank you again.